The Forgotten Colony. The first explosion shattered the morning calm of New Haven like thunder across a peaceful sky. Captain Maya Chen dropped her coffee as the ground beneath the colony's command center trembled, emergency alarms screaming their warning into the crisp air of the mining world. Through the reinforced windows of her office, Maya watched in horror as massive shadows passed overhead. The ships were unlike anything in the Colonial Defense database, their hulls a menacing black that seemed to absorb the light of New Haven's twin suns. Energy weapons lanced down from the vessels, striking the outer defensive positions with surgical precision. "Report!" Maya barked into her communicator as she raced toward the command center, her boots echoing against the metal corridors of the facility. 15 unknown vessels, Captain," came the strained voice of Lieutenant Torres from the tactical station. "They dropped out of hyperspace without warning. Our sensors didn't detect them until they were already in attack formation." Maya burst through the doors of the command center to find chaos. Technicians worked frantically at their stations while holographic displays showed the grim tactical situation. New Haven's modest defense force of 3 patrol ships and a handful of orbital platforms were hopelessly outmatched. The colony had been established 5 years ago on the edge of explored space, a joint venture between Earth's colonial administration and the peaceful Lumen species. The Lumens were gentle beings, tall and graceful with translucent skin that glowed softly in various colors depending on their emotions. They had invited humanity to share their world after discovering rich deposits of rare minerals beneath the planet's surface. "Captain, incoming transmission from the lead enemy vessel," called out Communications Officer Zhang. "Put it through," Maya ordered, steeling herself for what was to come. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a face that made Maya's blood run cold. The being before her was clearly Zephyrian, recognizable from intelligence briefings as one of the galaxy's most aggressive imperial species. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, with reptilian features and scales that shifted between dark green and black. But it was the eyes that truly marked them as predators, cold, calculating, and utterly without mercy. "I am General Vextar of the Zephyrian 3rd Imperial Fleet," the alien announced, his voice carrying the arrogance of absolute power. "This system now belongs to the Zephyrian Empire. You will surrender immediately and prepare for processing." Maya stepped forward, her jaw set with determination despite the impossible odds. "This is Captain Maya Chen of the New Haven Colonial Defense Force. This is a peaceful mining colony under the protection of the Galactic Accords. Your attack is a violation of interstellar law." Vextar's laugh was like the sound of breaking glass. "The Galactic Accords are meaningless words spoken by weak species. The Zephyrian Empire recognizes only one law, the right of the strong to take from the weak." Behind the general, Maya could see the bridge of his flagship, a massive vessel bristling with weapons. Zephyrian officers moved with military precision, their scaled hands dancing over control panels as they coordinated the assault on her world. "The Lumens have no military value," Maya tried, hoping to appeal to whatever strategic thinking might exist beneath the Zephyrians' brutality. "They're peaceful farmers and miners. There's nothing here worth an imperial invasion." "On the contrary, Captain," Vextar replied, his scaled lips curling into what might have been a smile. "The Lumens possess something very valuable indeed, their unique ability to sense mineral deposits without technology. They will make excellent slaves in our mining operations. As for your human population, you will serve as laborers until you are no longer useful." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Maya felt her heart pounding as the implications sank in. The Zephyrians weren't just conquering New Haven. They were planning to enslave every living being on the planet. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres called out, his voice tight with stress. "The Zephyrian fleet is moving into bombardment positions. Our defensive platforms are taking heavy fire." Maya watched on the tactical display as her small fleet was systematically destroyed. The patrol ship Endeavor exploded in a brilliant flash as Zephyrian plasma cannons overwhelmed its shields. The orbital platforms were falling one by one, their crews undoubtedly fighting to the last breath. "Dr. Rodriguez to Command Center," came a voice over the intercom. "We're receiving casualties from the outer settlements. The Zephyrians are using some kind of stunning weapon on the civilian population." Dr. James Rodriguez was the colony's chief medical officer, a man whose dedication to healing had made him beloved by both humans and Lumens alike. The fact that he was already treating casualties meant the enemy was moving faster than anyone had anticipated. How long before they reach the main colony? Maya asked. At their current rate of advance, maybe 6 hours, Torres replied grimly. Maya closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of the families scattered throughout New Haven's settlements, human children playing with young lumens in the crystal gardens, elderly lumens teaching human engineers the ancient songs that help them locate precious minerals, scientists from both species working together to understand the unique ecosystem of their shared world. She opened her eyes with renewed determination. Send out the emergency broadcast on all frequencies. Full priority distress call. Captain, the nearest Confederation fleet is 3 weeks away, Communications Officer Zhang pointed out. Even if they receive our signal immediately, they can't reach us in time. Send it anyway, Maya ordered. Someone needs to know what happened here. As Zhang worked to transmit the distress call across the galaxy, Maya turned her attention to defensive preparations. It was hopeless, she knew, but she would not surrender without a fight. The people of New Haven, both human and lumen, deserved better than to become slaves to an empire that viewed other species as property. Elder Kaya appeared at the entrance to the command center, her normally blue glowing skin now showing streaks of silver that indicated deep concern among her people. The lumen leader was ancient by human standards, having lived for over 3 centuries, but she moved with the grace of someone much younger. Captain Chen, Kaya said in her melodious voice, my people are ready to defend our home alongside yours. Maya felt a surge of emotion at the alien's words. The lumens had no experience with warfare, but they were willing to stand and fight rather than accept slavery. Elder Kaya, your people aren't warriors. We can't ask you to. You do not ask, Kaya interrupted gently. We choose. This world is our home, and these humans are our family. We will not abandon either. Before Maya could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. On the tactical display, she could see Zephyrian dropships descending toward the outer settlements like deadly rain. They're beginning the ground assault, Torres reported. Energy signatures suggest they're using non-lethal weapons. They want prisoners, not corpses. Maya nodded grimly. That gave them a small advantage, but not much of one. The Zephyrians would eventually kill anyone who proved too difficult to manage. They needed a miracle, and miracles were in short supply on the edge of explored space. The distress signal raced through hyperspace, a desperate cry for help that would reach dozens of worlds throughout the galaxy. Most who received it would ignore it. One more colony falling to pirates or raiders was hardly unusual in the dangerous frontier regions. The Galactic Confederation would file a report and promise to investigate, but their response would come too late to matter. But the signal would also reach other ears that had been listening and waiting for exactly this kind of call for decades. In the depths of space, hidden monitoring stations detected the transmission and began analyzing its contents. Advanced computers processed the tactical data, the species involved, and the nature of the threat. Deep within the Sol system, in facilities that officially didn't exist, emergency protocols began activating. Men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment received their orders and began moving with practiced efficiency toward ships that had never appeared on any public registry. Earth had been preparing for this day since humanity first ventured beyond their home system. They had watched and learned and built their strength in secret, waiting for the moment when they would need to reveal themselves to protect the innocent. That moment had finally come. On New Haven, Captain Maya Chen stood in her command center, watching the tactical display as enemy forces closed in on the settlements she had sworn to protect. She had no way of knowing that her distress call had reached exactly the right people, or that help was already on the way. She only knew that she would fight to the last breath to protect the families counting on her, human and lumen alike. And if that wasn't enough, at least the galaxy would know that New Haven had not gone quietly into the darkness. The battle for New Haven was about to begin, but it would end in ways that no one, not Maya, not Elder Kaya, and certainly not General Vextar, could possibly imagine. The Awakening Protocol. In the depths of the Sol system, hidden within what appeared to be a routine asteroid mining operation, Admiral Sarah Mitchell received the priority alert that she had been waiting 30 years to see. The massive command center buried inside the hollowed-out asteroid came alive with activity as technicians rushed to their stations and holographic displays materialized throughout the facility. Confirm the signal authentication, Admiral Mitchell ordered as she strode across the command deck, her silver hair catching the blue light of the tactical displays. At 65, she was one of the few people alive who remembered the early days of humanity's expansion into space, when they were just another struggling species trying to find their place among the stars. "Authentication confirmed, Admiral," reported Commander Lisa Park, the facility's operations chief. "This is a genuine Code 7 distress call from New Haven Colony. Zephyrian Imperial Forces estimated 15 capital ships conducting a slave raid on a mixed human-lumen population." Admiral Mitchell nodded grimly. Code 7 meant civilian population under immediate threat of enslavement or genocide. It was the highest priority classification in Earth's secret defense protocols, and it automatically triggered what military planners had dubbed the Silent Guardian Protocol. For decades, humanity had maintained the carefully cultivated image of a minor spacefaring species, interested primarily in peaceful trade and scientific research. Their colonies were lightly defended, their ships appeared to carry minimal weaponry, and their diplomatic corps consistently advocated for peaceful solutions to galactic conflicts. It was all an elaborate deception. The truth was that Earth had been building a military force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Hidden shipyards in the outer solar system had been constructing vessels that incorporated technologies decades ahead of anything known to galactic science. Training facilities scattered throughout the asteroid belt had been producing soldiers and officers capable of fighting in conditions that would destroy conventional forces. And most importantly, humanity had been watching. Every spacefaring species in the galaxy had been studied, their tactics analyzed, their weaknesses cataloged. Earth's intelligence network was vast and invisible, feeding information back to strategic planners who had been preparing for the day when humanity would need to reveal its true capabilities. "Signal Fleet Command," Admiral Mitchell ordered. "Activate all Guardian units. This is not a drill." Throughout the solar system, hidden bases began powering up systems that had been dormant for years. Ships that had been disguised as cargo haulers or research vessels shed their false hulls to reveal weapons arrays that could crack moons. Space stations that appeared to be routine communication relays opened concealed hangar bays and began launching fighters that moved like living things through the void. Captain David Park stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Retribution, watching his crew prepare for humanity's first open military action beyond the solar system. The ship was a masterpiece of engineering, incorporating adaptive armor that could shift its molecular structure to absorb different types of energy weapons, engines that could accelerate at rates that would crush the crew of any other species, and AI systems that could process tactical data faster than most organic minds could comprehend. "All stations report ready, Captain," announced his executive officer, Commander Janet Collins. "Guardian Fleet Alpha is assembled and awaiting your orders." Through the bridge's main view screen, Captain Park could see the rest of the fleet taking formation around his flagship. 47 vessels that represented the pinnacle of human military technology, each one crewed by volunteers who had trained their entire adult lives for this moment. "Signal from Fleet Command, sir," reported the communications officer. "Admiral Mitchell is transmitting tactical data on the target system." The main display shifted to show a three-dimensional representation of the New Haven system, with Zephyrian forces marked in red and the desperate defenders highlighted in blue. Captain Park studied the tactical situation with the cold calculation of a predator analyzing prey. 15 Zephyrian capital ships, he murmured, more to himself than to his crew. They think they're conducting a simple raid on a defenseless colony. "Orders, sir?" Commander Collins asked. Captain Park smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. "Standard Guardian protocol. We arrive, we eliminate the threat, and we leave no witnesses to report what they've seen." The Retribution and her escorts engaged their hyperspace drives, vanishing from the Sol system in flashes of twisted space-time. Behind them, Admiral Mitchell continued coordinating the largest military operation in human history from her hidden command center. "Admiral, we're receiving updates from our deep space monitoring network," Commander Park reported. "The Zephyrian assault on New Haven is proceeding on schedule. Enemy forces have landed on the planet's surface and are beginning to round up civilians." Admiral Mitchell felt a cold anger settle in her chest. She had read the intelligence reports on Zephyrian slave operations. Families torn apart, children sold to the highest bidder, adults worked to death in alien mines. It was a practice that humanity had sworn to end, no matter the cost. "How long until Guardian Fleet Alpha reaches the target?" she asked. 17 hours at maximum hyperspace velocity. Too long, Admiral Mitchell thought. People were dying while they raced through hyperspace, but it couldn't be helped. The Guardian fleets were positioned to respond to threats throughout human space, not to handle emergencies in the far frontier regions. On New Haven, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Captain Maya Chen crouched behind an overturned vehicle in the main colony square, her sidearm trained on the Zephyrian soldiers herding civilians toward their transport ships. The aliens moved with practiced efficiency, stunning anyone who resisted and sorting their prisoners by apparent physical capability. Dr. Rodriguez had set up a makeshift medical station in a nearby building, treating the wounded while Elder Kaya helped coordinate the evacuation of non-combatants to the underground shelter network. The Lumen's natural ability to navigate the crystal cave systems beneath the colony had proven invaluable in keeping civilians away from the main fighting. "Captain," came Torres's voice through her comm unit, "the Zephyrians have taken the communications array. We're cut off from outside contact." Maya cursed quietly. Without communications, they couldn't even know if anyone had received their distress call. For all she knew, they were fighting a hopeless battle that the rest of the galaxy would never even hear about. A Zephyrian patrol rounded the corner, their scaled faces scanning for additional targets. Maya held her breath, knowing that her small resistance force couldn't stand against another direct assault. They had been lucky so far, using hit-and-run tactics to slow the enemy advance, but their ammunition was running low, and more Zephyrian reinforcements were landing every hour. One of the aliens stopped directly in front of her hiding place, its head tilted as if listening for something. Maya tightened her grip on her weapon, preparing for what might be her final fight. Then the sky exploded. The first sign that something had changed was the way the Zephyrian soldiers suddenly stopped what they were doing and looked up at the heavens with expressions of confusion and growing alarm. Maya followed their gaze and saw shapes moving against the starfield, shapes that definitely had not been there moments before. General Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the tactical display with growing disbelief. His sensors were showing impossible readings. Dozens of unknown vessels had appeared at the edge of the system, moving toward his fleet at velocities that should have been impossible to achieve. "Tactical analysis," he barked at his staff. "Unknown, General," came the nervous reply from his sensor operator. "The vessels are using propulsion systems that don't match any known technology. Their approach vector suggests they intend to engage our forces." Vextar studied the data with the experience of a warrior who had conquered dozens of worlds. The unknown ships were smaller than his capital vessels, but there were more of them, and they were moving in perfect formation with a coordination that suggested either telepathic communication or AI control beyond anything in Zephyrian databases. "Open communication channels," he ordered. "I want to know who these fools are before I destroy them." The main screen activated, showing the bridge of the lead enemy vessel. Vextar found himself looking at a being that appeared almost comically small compared to his own impressive bulk. The creature was obviously human, recognizable from intelligence files as one of the minor species that had recently begun expanding beyond their home system. "I am Captain David Park of the Earth Defense Force," the human said in a voice that carried absolute confidence despite his species' apparent physical limitations. "You are conducting illegal slave raids against a protected population. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Vextar laughed, the sound echoing throughout his bridge. "Human, you are either very brave or very stupid. I command 15 capital ships of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy. You are outnumbered and outgunned." Captain Park's expression didn't change. "General Vextar, you are correct about one thing. This engagement will be very brief." The transmission ended, leaving Vextar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his officers began reporting enemy movement as the human fleet shifted into attack formation. "General, the human vessels are breaking into smaller groups," reported his tactical SIN officer. "It appears they intend to engage us on multiple fronts simultaneously." Vextar nodded, already planning his response. The humans were using classic Wolfpack tactics, trying to divide his forces and prevent him from bringing his superior firepower to bear effectively. It was a reasonable strategy for a smaller force, but it would fail against Zephyrian military discipline and superior technology. "All ships, prepare for battle," he ordered. "Show these humans why the Zephyrian Empire rules half the galaxy." The first human vessel to engage was a sleek destroyer that moved through space like a living thing, its hull reflecting the light of New Haven's twin suns as it danced between Zephyrian plasma bolts. The ship's weapons were unlike anything in Vextar's experience, coherent energy beams that seemed to adapt their frequency in real time to overcome his ship's shields. Within minutes, 2 of his destroyers were drifting hulks, their crews unconscious from some form of non-lethal neural weapon. The human ship had disabled them without destroying them, a mercy that Vextar found both puzzling and infuriating. "How are they doing this?" he demanded as another of his vessels fell silent, its crew apparently stunned into unconsciousness by weapons that somehow penetrated Zephyrian armor without causing permanent harm. His tactical officer's voice was strained with disbelief. "General, their technology appears to be several generations beyond our own. Their ships are adapting to our weapons in real time, and their attack patterns suggest they have complete knowledge of our tactical doctrine." That was when Vextar realized the terrible truth. Humanity hadn't just stumbled into this battle. They had been preparing for it, studying Zephyrian tactics and technology, building weapons specifically designed to counter everything his empire could bring to bear. The revelation came too late to save his fleet, the price of peace. 3 weeks after the Battle of New Haven, Ambassador Elena Torres sat in the ornate chambers of the Galactic Council on Centria Prime, facing the collective gaze of representatives from 47 different species. The silence in the vast hall was profound, broken only by the soft hum of translation systems working to render her words into dozens of alien languages. Elena had served in Earth's diplomatic corps for 15 years, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for this moment. The revelation of humanity's true military capabilities had sent shockwaves throughout known space, fundamentally altering the balance of power that had existed for centuries. Supreme Chancellor Morvac, the insectoid leader of the Galactic Council, leaned forward in his crystalline chair. His compound eyes reflected the light from the chamber's ornate ceiling as he spoke in the clicking musical language of his people. "Ambassador Torres," the translation system rendered his words into perfect standard galactic. "The Council has reviewed the tactical data from the New Haven incident. We find ourselves concerned by the implications of your species' actions." Elena maintained her diplomatic composure, though she could feel the weight of history pressing down upon her shoulders. In the weeks since Captain Park's fleet had systematically dismantled the Zephyrian task force, intelligence reports had been flooding in from across the galaxy. Other species were mobilizing their fleets, forming new alliances, and desperately trying to understand how humanity had achieved such overwhelming technological superiority. "Supreme Chancellor," Elena replied carefully, "humanity acted to protect innocent civilians from enslavement and genocide. We believe the Council would approve of such actions." A ripple of movement passed through the assembled delegates as they communicated among themselves through various means. Chemical signals, electromagnetic pulses, and subsonic vocalizations that human ears couldn't detect. Elena had studied xenobiology extensively, but the complexity of multi-species communication still amazed her. Representative Veltar of the Andromedan Collective spoke next, her blue-scaled features expressing what Elena's cultural briefings had taught her to recognize as deep suspicion. "The concern is not with your stated objectives, Ambassador, but with the methods employed and the capabilities revealed. Your fleet demonstrated technologies that appear to be decades ahead of anything in our databases." Elena nodded, having expected this line of questioning. "The defense of New Haven required us to reveal certain, previously classified capabilities, but I want to assure the Council that humanity has no aggressive intentions toward any peaceful species." "No aggressive intentions," repeated Chancellor Morvac, his mandibles clicking in what Elena hoped was thoughtful consideration rather than irritation. "Yet you have apparently been preparing for war while publicly advocating for peace. How do we reconcile these contradictory positions?" It was the question that Elena had been dreading, because answering it honestly would require revealing the full scope of Earth's secret military preparations. The Guardian Protocol hadn't just been about building advanced weapons. It had been about creating a hidden intelligence network that monitored every major power in the galaxy. "Supreme Chancellor," Elena began, choosing her words with extreme care, "humanity learned early in our expansion into space that the galaxy can be a dangerous place. We chose to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best." Representative Zeth Kree of the Hegemony Alliance rose from his seat, his reptilian features bearing an uncomfortable resemblance to the Zephyrians who had attacked New Haven. Elena reminded herself that the Hegemony, despite their appearance, were actually one of the more peaceful spacefaring civilizations. "Ambassador, Our intelligence services estimate that the construction of your revealed fleet would have required massive industrial capacity and decades of preparation. This suggests that humanity has been planning for large-scale military operations since almost the beginning of your expansion into space. Elena felt her heart rate increase slightly, knowing that she was walking a diplomatic tightrope. Too much honesty would terrify the other species into taking preemptive action against Earth. Too little would be seen as deception and achieve the same result. Representative Zethkri, I can assure you that Earth's military preparations have always been defensive in nature. We have never initiated hostilities against any species, nor have we claimed territory that belonged to others. But you have been watching us, said Representative Veltar, her statement carrying the weight of accusation. Our analysis of your fleet's tactical performance suggests detailed knowledge of Zephyrian weapons and tactics that could only have been gained through extensive surveillance. The chamber fell silent as Elena realized that the moment of truth had finally arrived. The other species weren't just concerned about human military capabilities. They were beginning to understand the true scope of Earth's intelligence operations. We have been observing galactic affairs, Elena admitted carefully, as have all spacefaring civilizations. The difference is that we chose to act on our observations when innocent lives were at stake. Chancellor Morvac's compound eyes shifted to focus entirely on Elena, a sign that she had his complete attention. Ambassador, we are not discussing routine intelligence gathering. Your forces demonstrated knowledge of specific tactical doctrines, weapons frequencies, and operational procedures that suggest infiltration of military command structures. How deep does this surveillance network extend? Elena took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would determine whether humanity would be welcomed as a protector of galactic peace or feared as a threat to be eliminated. Supreme Chancellor, members of the Council, I will be completely honest with you about Earth's capabilities and intentions. She activated her personal holographic projector, filling the air above the chamber floor with a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Green dots appeared throughout known space, each one representing a monitoring station or intelligence asset. For the past 50 years, Earth has maintained a comprehensive observation network throughout inhabited space. We have monitored communication channels, analyzed military exercises, and studied the social and political structures of every major civilization. The reaction was immediate and intense. Delegates began talking rapidly among themselves, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sounds, lights, and chemical signals that the chamber's environmental systems struggled to process. Chancellor Morvac raised one of his arms in a gesture that Elena recognized as a call for order. Gradually, the chaos subsided, though the tension in the chamber had increased dramatically. Continue, Ambassador, the Chancellor said, his tone carefully neutral. This network exists for one purpose, Elena continued, her voice carrying across the vast chamber, to identify threats to peaceful civilizations before they can act. The Zephyrian attack on New Haven was not an isolated incident. Our intelligence indicates that they have conducted similar raids on 17 other worlds in the past 5 years. Representative Zethkri leaned forward in his seat. 17 worlds, we have no records of such attacks. Because they targeted isolated colonies and non-aligned species, Elena replied. Civilizations that lacked the political influence to bring their grievances before this council. The Zephyrians chose their victims carefully, ensuring that their crimes would go unnoticed and unpunished. Elena manipulated the holographic display, highlighting the locations of the previous attacks. In each case, the pattern was the same. A remote colony is attacked without warning, the population is enslaved or eliminated, and any evidence of the raid is destroyed. By the time anyone investigates, there is nothing left to find. The implications of Elena's words began to sink in throughout the chamber. If humanity's intelligence network had been tracking these attacks, it meant that other species' intelligence services had failed to detect a pattern of genocide and enslavement that had been ongoing for years. Representative Veltar spoke into the uncomfortable silence. If you were aware of these attacks, why did you not act sooner? Elena had been expecting this question as well, and her answer was perhaps the most important words she would ever speak. Because we hoped that the established galactic powers would eventually detect and respond to these crimes. We believed that revealing our true capabilities would destabilize galactic politics and potentially lead to a war that would cost millions of lives. But you were willing to reveal them to save New Haven, Chancellor Morvac observed. Yes, Elena replied simply, because at some point, the cost of inaction becomes greater than the cost of action. We could not stand by and watch another peaceful population be enslaved while we maintained our comfortable anonymity. Elena paused, letting her words resonate throughout the chamber before continuing. The question before this council is not whether humanity has been preparing for war. Clearly we have. The question is what kind of galaxy we want to live in going forward. She manipulated the holographic display again, this time showing current fleet movements throughout known space. Red markers indicated military buildups and territorial disputes, while yellow markers showed regions where piracy and slavery were known problems. The galaxy is becoming increasingly unstable. Traditional powers are expanding their territories through force. Peaceful species are being preyed upon by slavers and pirates, and the existing mechanisms for maintaining order are proving inadequate to address these challenges. Representative Zethkri studied the display with obvious concern. "What are you proposing, Ambassador?" Elena looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of delegates from species that spanned the biological spectrum, from silicon-based crystalline beings to energy entities that existed partially outside normal space-time. "I am proposing that we work together to create a new model for galactic security. Humanity is willing to serve as a protective force for peaceful civilizations, but we cannot and will not act as galactic dictators. We need the wisdom and guidance of established civilizations to ensure that our actions serve the cause of justice rather than our own interests." The silence that followed was broken by Representative Kelnari of the Centaurian Federation, a species known for their philosophical approach to galactic politics. "And if we refuse this proposal, if we demand that humanity withdraw its forces and dismantle its intelligence network..." Elena's expression became grave. "Then you will be asking us to stand by while innocent people suffer and die. That is something we cannot do, regardless of the political consequences." Chancellor Morvac's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign that Elena had learned to interpret as intense deliberation. Finally he spoke. "Ambassador Torres, your proposal presents the Council with an unprecedented situation. No single species has ever possessed the military capability to enforce their will throughout the galaxy, nor has any species been willing to accept the burden of protecting others without demanding territorial or political concessions in return." Elena nodded. "We understand the unprecedented nature of our situation, Supreme Chancellor. That is precisely why we believe it requires an unprecedented response." The debate that followed lasted for 6 hours and covered everything from the philosophical implications of a single species serving as galactic protector to the practical challenges of coordinating humanitarian interventions across thousands of light years. Elena answered questions about Earth's military capabilities, the scope of their intelligence network, and their long-term intentions for galactic expansion. Finally, Chancellor Morvac called for a recess to allow the various delegations to consult among themselves. Elena was escorted to a waiting chamber where she could rest and review her notes while the council deliberated. As she sat alone in the elegantly appointed room, Elena reflected on the irony of the situation. Humanity had spent decades hiding their true strength, hoping to avoid exactly this kind of political crisis. Now they found themselves forced to justify their power to the very civilizations they had been secretly protecting. Her contemplation was interrupted by the arrival of an unexpected visitor. Captain Maya Chen entered the chamber, still wearing the simple uniform of the New Haven Colonial Defense Force. Elena rose to greet the woman whose desperate distress call had changed the course of galactic history. "Captain Chen," Elena said warmly, "I didn't expect to see you here." Maya smiled, though Elena could see the weight of recent events in her eyes. "The council requested that I provide testimony about the Zephyrian attack and the human response. I've spent the last 2 days answering questions about what I saw during the battle." "And what did you tell them?" Maya's expression became serious. "I told them the truth, that your people saved my world and everyone on it, that you could have simply destroyed the Zephyrian fleet but instead chose to disable their ships and capture their crews, that you provided medical aid to both humans and lumens without asking for anything in return." Elena felt a surge of gratitude toward the colonial captain. Maya's testimony would carry significant weight with the council, coming as it did from someone who had no political agenda beyond protecting her people. "How are things on New Haven?" Elena asked. "Better than I expected," Maya replied. Elder Kaya and the Lumen Council have been working with our colonial administration to establish new defensive measures. Your people left behind some interesting technology, communication systems that can't be jammed, and sensor arrays that can detect ships dropping out of hyperspace at extreme range. Elena nodded. The Guardian Protocol included provisions for upgrading the defensive capabilities of vulnerable colonies, though the specific technologies shared were carefully chosen to be useful for defense without revealing the full scope of human capabilities. Captain, may I ask you a personal question? Elena said. When you sent out that distress call, did you really expect anyone to respond? Maya was quiet for a moment, her gaze distant as she remembered those desperate hours when her world had been under attack. Honestly, no. I sent it because it was the right thing to do, because someone needed to know what was happening to us. I never imagined that anyone had the power to actually help us, let alone arrive in time to make a difference. And now that you know the truth about Earth's capabilities? Now I understand why the galaxy needs you, Maya said firmly. There are too many New Havens out there, peaceful worlds that can't defend themselves against empires like the Zephyrians. If humanity has the power to protect them, then you have a moral obligation to do so. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime indicating that the council was ready to reconvene. Elena and Maya made their way back to the main chamber, where they found the delegates already assembled and waiting. Chancellor Morvac rose from his seat, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights as he spoke. Ambassador Torres, the council has reached a preliminary decision regarding humanity's proposal. Elena felt her heart racing as she waited for the Chancellor's next words. The future of galactic civilization might well depend on what he said next. After extensive deliberation, the Council has decided to establish a trial period for what we are calling the Guardian Accord. Under this agreement, humanity will be granted authority to intervene in cases of genocide, slavery, and unprovoked aggression against peaceful populations. Elena felt a wave of relief, but the Chancellor wasn't finished. However, this authority comes with significant conditions. First, all Guardian operations must be reported to the Council within 48 hours of initiation. Second, captured enemy personnel and equipment must be turned over to appropriate galactic authorities for trial and disposition. Third, no Guardian action may be taken within the sovereign territory of any Council member species without explicit permission. Elena considered the conditions carefully. They were restrictive but not unreasonably so. Earth had never intended to operate as a rogue force, and the proposed oversight mechanisms would actually help legitimize their actions in the eyes of other species. The Council finds these terms acceptable, Elena replied formally. Humanity accepts the responsibility and the oversight that comes with the Guardian Accord. Chancellor Morvac's mandibles clicked in what Elena had learned to recognize as satisfaction. Then let it be recorded that on this date, the Galactic Council formally recognizes the Earth Guardian Force as a legitimate peacekeeping organization, authorized to act in defense of innocent life throughout known space. The chamber erupted in a complex symphony of sounds, lights, and chemical signals as delegates from dozens of species expressed their reactions to the historic decision. Some clearly approved of the arrangement, while others remained skeptical or concerned about the implications. Representative Veltar of the Andromedan Collective requested permission to speak. Ambassador Torres, while the collective supports the Guardian Accord in principle, we must ask about humanity's long-term intentions. Do your people intend to expand this protective role indefinitely? Will Earth eventually claim authority over all galactic security matters? Elena had been prepared for this question, and her answer came from the heart rather than from any diplomatic briefing. Representative Veltar, humanity has no desire to rule the galaxy or impose our values on other species. Our goal is to create a galaxy where peaceful civilizations can develop and thrive without fear of conquest or enslavement. She paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. We hope that someday the Guardian Force will no longer be necessary, that all species will have developed the wisdom and the strength to protect themselves and their neighbors. Until that day comes, we consider ourselves privileged to serve as protectors of those who cannot protect themselves. Representative Zethkri leaned forward in his seat. And what of accountability, Ambassador? Who watches the watchers? Who ensures that humanity's power is not corrupted by its exercise? Elena smiled, appreciating the philosophical depth of the question. That, Representative Zethkri, is why we are here today. We are asking you, all of you, to be our conscience and our guide. We want the established civilizations of the galaxy to help us ensure that our actions serve justice rather than our own interests." Chancellor Morvac nodded approvingly. "A wise answer, Ambassador. The Council will establish an oversight committee to monitor Guardian operations and provide guidance on complex ethical questions that may arise." As the formal session concluded, Elena found herself surrounded by delegates from various species, some offering congratulations, others expressing concerns or asking for clarification on specific points. The process of implementing the Guardian Accord would clearly be complex and challenging, but at least it was beginning. Captain Maya Chen approached Elena as the chamber began to empty. "Ambassador, I wanted to thank you again for what your people did for New Haven, but I also wanted to ask you something." "Of course, Captain." "The Guardian Force, will you be recruiting from other species? The Lumens on New Haven have been asking about it. They want to help protect other worlds from what they experienced." Elena considered the question carefully. The Guardian Protocol had always been conceived as a human operation, but the idea of incorporating willing volunteers from other species had intriguing possibilities. "I'll bring that suggestion back to Earth Command," Elena promised. The idea of a truly multi-species Guardian Force has considerable appeal. As Elena prepared to leave Centria Prime and return to Earth, she reflected on the magnitude of what had been accomplished. Humanity had emerged from the shadows and accepted the burden of protecting galactic civilization. The Guardian Accord would formalize their role and provide the oversight necessary to ensure that their power was used responsibly. But Elena also knew that this was only the beginning. News of the Guardian Accord would spread throughout the galaxy, reaching species and organizations that might view humanity's new role as a threat to their own interests. There would be challenges ahead, conflicts that would test the wisdom of the Council's decision and the resolve of the Guardian Force. In the depths of space, monitoring stations detected ships moving through unexplored regions, ancient powers stirring in response to the changing galactic order. Some would become allies in the cause of peace, while others would emerge as new threats that even humanity's advanced technology might struggle to counter. The age of the Silent Guardians was over. The age of the Guardian Accord had begun, and with it came both the promise of a more peaceful galaxy and the certainty that humanity's greatest challenges still lay ahead. As Elena's ship departed Centria Prime and set course for Earth, she carried with her the weight of history and the hope of billions of beings throughout the galaxy who now looked to humanity as their protector. It was a responsibility that would define her species for generations to come, shaping their destiny among the stars and determining whether they would be remembered as liberators or conquerors. The Silent Guardians had revealed themselves at last, and the galaxy would never be the same.